I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Air Pollution Control District of Santa Barbara County. Today's March 21st, 2019. Will you call the roll, please, Madam Clerk?
Director Julian?
Here.
Mosby? Here. Patino?
Here.
Toussaint? Waite, I believe, is filling in.
Yes. Here.
Thank you. Williams?
Here.
Hart?
Here.
Hartman? Here. Adam? Lavanino?
Here.
Sierra? Here. Clark? Perotti?
Here.
And Chair Murillo.
Here. Thank you. We'll do our Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 17th?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
That was Ms. Patino and Ms. Hart. Any other discussion? We need to do a roll call. Okay, thank you.
Director Julian?
Same.
Mosby?
Aye.
Patino?
Aye.
Waite?
Yes.
Williams?
Aye.
Hart?
Aye.
Hartman? Lavanino?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
Perotti?
Abstain.
And Chair Murillo.
Aye. Okay, that passes our minutes. And we're going to our administrative items. Is there an item to pool? Does anyone have discussion? Then can I have a motion to accept our administrative items? Right.
Motion to approve admin items?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Mosby? Patino?
Aye.
Waite?
Yes.
Williams?
Aye.
Hart? Sorry, Hartman. Got to go in order. Lavanino?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
Perotti?
Aye.
And Chair Murillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
I know it's confusing, and we're even having folks starting to confuse their genders because it's so confusing.
We'll try to keep our head on straight then. So that closes that item, and we'll go to our public comment, and I think we have someone.
Yes, I have one speaker slip at this time, Irv Beeman.
Dr. Beeman, come on up. And Madam Clerk, you'll keep track of the time in 3 minutes.
And I'll just say it's a pleasure to see you in the flesh. I get so many emails from you. I now can attach a face.
Thanks, I share climate change.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Irv Beeman, resident of Santa Ynez. I'm a retired research psychologist and manager. My professional background includes delivering a 3-year project on leadership risk assessment at the Hanford Nuclear.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, we cannot hear
Oh, there.
in North County.
In
Can you
Washington.
start-
Want me to start over?
Yes, please.
Okay, 3 minutes starts over too. My name is Dr. Irv Beeman.
Thank you.
A resident of Santa Ynez. I'm a retired research psychologist and management consultant. My professional background includes delivering a 3-year project on leadership risk assessment at the Hanford Nuclear Facility in Washington State, the country's most critical nuclear installation. I lived and worked in China for 20 years. When I arrived in '93, people in China were dying of old age in their 80s and 90s. After 20 years of massive economic transformation, when I left in 2013, they were dying in their 50s and 60s from bad air and water. This is relevant because particulate pollution is a real public health risk for Santa Barbara County. PM10 can travel up to 20 miles from its origin and can remain in your bronchial tubes and lungs, contributing to asthma, inflammation, COPD, and lung cancer. PM 2.5 can travel more than 100 miles. It's so small it can penetrate the lung sac alveoli, enter the bloodstream, and be deposited in your organs and tissues, causing DNA damage, inflammation, and chronic disease, including cancer. APCD has a project to deploy purple air monitors in the county. The first step is to place purple air monitors in each of the nearby communities of Lompoc, Los Alamos, Gary, Sisquoc, Orcutt, and in small residential communities adjacent to the oil fields. The second step is to find a way through the bureaucratic maze of regulation to require the placement of purple air monitors in the midst of each oil company's operations. This might be accomplished through local rulemaking. In parallel with the second step, there should be a shift in maximum fines from $1,000 to $5,000, the new maximum that is allowed per incident per day, according to my understanding. This stuff is dangerous over the long term. Even in the short term, after 2 measurement drives on Cat Canyon and Palmer Roads during which I detected unusual odors, I experienced uncontrollable tremors in my hands for several weeks. What I breathed seemed to have had neurotoxic effects. Your role as the board is to provide guidance and oversight for APCD in fulfilling its mission, which is to protect the people and the environment of Santa Barbara County from air pollution. I urge you to ensure that a major portion of what I understand to be the $50,000 budget allocation for purple air monitors is immediately deployed in each of these communities for 24/7 reporting as an early warning system for public health. Rather than APCD waiting for a complaint, this public reporting should trigger an immediate on-site investigation to investigate the source, allowing more rapid and consistent detection of violations, thereby enabling APCD to do an even better job in accomplishing its mission. The problem is these particulates aren't normally smellable. You don't detect particulate pollution with your nose. And the only way a complaint would happen is with, somebody could smell something.
Dr.
So we need
Beeman,
air
thank
quality
you.
monitors.
And thank you for submitting this in written form. We'll refer it to our staff. Thank you. Any other public speakers?
I do have one more speaker slip, Larry Bishop.
Mr. Bishop.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for hearing this out there. I'm here in support of what Irv Beam was just talking about, the purple air monitoring, primarily because it's a nice word, purple air monitoring, sounds good. But I'm a retired hazardous material specialist with the County of Santa Barbara, and I've been on many air pollution complaint type things because we look at releases of hazardous materials of all sorts. And for 3 reasons, really, I support citizens having the capability to detect and to record in some way, some evidence, some empirical evidence that these releases are occurring. One, businesses don't like to incriminate themselves. They often do not report their releases. 2, if they are going to release, they know they're going to release. Sometimes they don't tell APCD. They don't, and they don't get a permit from APCD. 3, sometimes when you have low-level, slow releases, they migrate and go into low areas in very still, F stability type situations where meteorological situations where they collect. And I've been on I have 3 examples of showing that. One, they don't report releases. Veneco plant, the oil and gas plant, used to have lots of releases, and I was involved in one very large release sometime back when all sorts of regulators were banging at their door. People in Elwood were complaining up the yin-yang, and they said, no, there's no release here, until some APCD folks came in the next day, banged on their door, and then they revealed a very large release. They were blaming it on a farmer up the creek for his sour water well. Another incident in Buellton, and I know Mayor Sierra knows about this. In Buellton, there was 5 years ago a contractor to Plains Pipeline released a large amount of gas in the middle of the night, about 9 o'clock at night when the air was very still. They didn't tell APCD. they were purging a line, getting ready for a pipeline repair. They didn't tell APCD, they didn't get an APCD permit, and there were a ton of complaints to Buellton City, and I slept like 1 hour that night. It was, the smell was so strong.
Would you wrap up your thoughts,
Okay,
please?
and then the third example is the stink in Clark Avenue in Santa Maria, where Greco was slowly leaking from old deteriorated lines and constantly, perhaps the Santa Maria folks here remember, constantly stinking up Highway 101, and about from like 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then the air would heat up, the stink would go away, and it took a long time before some APCD, intrepid APCD inspectors
Thank you,
tracked
Mr.
down the
Bishop.
lines. Okay, and,
Yeah.
and then did find that. So for those reasons, please support this citizen project. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone would like to make a comment? I think your light was on first. No, over here. Mr. Williams first.
Well, I just wanted to, because we have talked about what the usefulness of purple air filters have been in the past, and maybe Aaron, you could correct me or make sure my comments are precise, and Rachel, you as well. My understanding is we can put purple airs out there, but it's mainly for the purpose of public information, because if we were to use it as an instrument for enforcement, we would have to purchase more expensive and precise pieces of equipment. That's was my takeaway. Is that the case?
And could I just chime in so you can
Yes,
respond to
please.
it all at once? Thank you, Madam Chair. As I understand the purple air monitors, well, it's a new program. We're deploying them. They offer a first way to get indications that there might be problems. It goes online, so it is public. But if we did see something that raised our suspicions, we now have a mobile unit that we could deploy. But could you tell us when when these are deploying, how we decided where they're deploying, and how you'll be reporting back to us and following up?
Sure. They are low-cost sensors. Their margin of error is much greater than what you see in a federal reference method that we would have at one of our ambient air quality stations themselves. It's definitely a screening level. They're a great tool for measuring trends, just to get a better sense of the fluctuations throughout the area. But what we also observed is during wildfire season, they tend to run very high when you compare it to the federal reference method. But it's definitely our initial step. With board approval, we're in the process now of deploying purple airs countywide. We received 15 from CARB, and that was precisely related to wildfire impact. So we've deployed those at our our air monitoring stations so we can do some calibration with our federal reference methods. And then after board approval, to deploy an additional 23, I believe, no, 28. We're going to have 43 total purple airs countywide. We took a look at the entire county map and identified schools and other senior centers where you have sensitive receptors, and making that available to get a broad view countywide of potential implications. We're now reaching out to the schools and the other facilities. We have the user agreement, which is part of your board action that was taken, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the one prior, and we're working with those organizations to get the agreement in place, and staff are ready to go out and install the purple airs. I'll bring that information back to you. It would probably be helpful even to look at the map online once we have the purple airs up in place. We do have the mobile air monitoring station that's coming. That is a much higher grade piece of equipment that is much similar to a federal reference method. It's actually, you can actually use the PM25 and PM10 as federal equivalent method. It also has the H2S monitor on it, and it's mobile, so we can bring it around where we are experiencing the complaints, and that would be a tool that we could use to actually take enforcement action if we found levels and the associated source that was causing the release.
Ms. Van Mullen, I'm a little concerned this isn't on the agenda officially. I don't want to violate the Brown Act. What are your thoughts if we continue with this conversation?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the Brown Act does allow brief response to public comment, and it seems that we're also sort of transitioning into the next item, which is the director's report. So I think we're okay on the Brown Act, and maybe we can just transition now to the director's report if there's more to add on this.
Okay. That sound okay with everyone?
Sure.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. We'll close public comment, and we'll go to item F, the director's report.
All right, thank you. First off, I would like to introduce new staff that has joined the district. Lorena Saldana joined the APCD in February as an office technician with 10 years of experience in professional office setting. Her background includes real estate marketing as well as youth and Latino communication outreach for the County of San Luis Obispo. She graduated from Cal Poly in 2013, go Mustangs, with a bachelor degree in communication studies, and she also studied media communication at London Metropolitan University. Please join me in welcoming Lorena. Next up, I was happy we have the meeting today, and it actually coincides with our launch of our new logo. We're very excited to share our new logo with you today. This was included in our this current budget, and it has been close to 3 decades since the APCD has refreshed or re-imaged its logo. We worked with a company, Irene Hoffman Design, a local company here in Santa Barbara, to create this new look. The colors and layers provide an abstract representation of our landscape throughout Santa Barbara County, I apologize. The circular icon is more flexible as far as how we could use it. It's very helpful when you have that circular icon on a lot of the websites and social media. And we also, you can see it here, we have the horizontal, which is our primary logo, and then the secondary logos being more condensed and even vertical. So for sponsorship, event sponsorship, it'll be more recognizable. We're in the process of getting all of our letterhead and outreach materials printed, and our pool cars. We were going to have the logos on our pool cars today, but the rain interfered, so we had to postpone that for next week. We do have our new website, or a website with the new logo incorporated. That went live today, and a press release is being issued. This is going to lead us into the creation of a new website, and part of our press release is to emphasize a survey that we have. We're asking anyone who uses our website, the public, to take a short amount of time to go online and give us some feedback as to potential changes of content, layout, and information that we provide back to the public. All right. Next item, Rule 361 and 342 workshop. We discussed this issue recently with your board. It's boilers, water heaters, process heaters between 2 and 5 million metric BTUs per hour, and then Rule 342, similar boilers, water heaters, and process heaters, 5 million BTU and greater. This was part of our 2016 ozone plan rule development schedule, and it was also identified recently as part of our best available retrofit control technology schedule that you approved in December. We held a workshop on March 14th in Solvang at the City Hall. We also made hard copies and email notices available to all of the 72 impacted sources. We had emails sent out to the subscription list that receive public notices as well. On our website, we have the draft rule that we discussed at the workshop, along with the staff presentation, and we're requesting comments on this draft rule by March 28th. Our plan is to bring this to our CAC, our Community Advisory Council, at their meeting set for May 1st, and then present it to your board at your hearing June, but probably August, depending on how things progress with public comment and the review that's necessary in order to bring that here. On the monitoring front, I did want to let you know, because this is something I've talked about recently, on February 22nd, we actually received approval from EPA on our monitoring network changes. That's been something we've been waiting for, so we can prepare to take over the Santa Maria and the Santa Barbara stations. So we're in the process now of closing down 3 of our stations to allocate resources necessary to maintain those stations at Santa Barbara and Santa Maria. So we were very pleased to work through the CARB and EPA process to get their final endorsement of our proposal. On the legislative front, there are 2 pieces of legislation I wanted to bring to your attention. AB 836, this is Wicks. She's in the Berkeley, Richmond area. She's been working with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to develop clean air centers. This is in response to the wildfires and the impacts that we have, and the ability to have public centers like a cooling center or a warming center, but a clean air center where it's a place where vulnerable population can go when we are inundated with smoke. As the bill is currently structured, it's geared solely for the Bay Area, so there's efforts to expand this statewide. So CAPCOA is actively engaged in trying to get this bill expanded statewide, so similar centers, if it's improved as it works through the legislative process, would also be made possible for our region as well. And then SB 69, Scott Wiener, he's in San Francisco. He has Ocean Resiliency Act that's going through the process now. This bill primarily focuses on improvements to protect the health of our ocean ecosystems and coastal communities. It was recently modified to include creation of a vessel speed reduction program. You're going to hear more about that today. Tim has a presentation for you on our 2018 program. It's just nice to see some recognition here in California of the program. It continues to identify the Santa Barbara Channel and the Bay Area as the 2 regions for this vessel speed reduction, but it does have the concept of going beyond that if it's proven beneficial to the state. So we'll see how that goes through, and I'll keep you updated as well. The last item, I just wanted to do a short update on CARB's Criteria Toxic Reporting Regulation. At their December meeting, CARB made some modifications to their emission reporting rule, and this was part of AB 617, the Community Air Protection Program, and they're trying to make emissions inventory and reporting consistent throughout California. They were originally intending to have increased monitoring or emissions reporting in the 10 communities that have been identified as communities of concern statewide, but at the December meeting, the CARB board wanted and directed staff to expand the scope so all sources throughout the entire state would be captured by this enhanced emissions reporting. So we're working with CARB. We're also working directly with CAPCOA on assessing the impacts to our areas. As we compare to other districts, we're doing quite well in our emissions reporting and data submittal to CARB. We're just trying to see what this proposed modification, how it would impact our district operations as well as the individual sources, and making sure that we can do that in a streamlined way that will meet the goals of CARB, but also ensure it's possible for us to successfully submit the information working with our sources in the time frame that's defined. So more will likely come on as that evolves. It's a 15-day package. They have until, I think it's until October of this year to work that 15-day package through the system to the Office of Administrative Law. So there's going to be more conversation with CARB before it's final. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Ms. Arlen Janae from Santa Maria? Oh, yes.
Thank you. I had several. The first is about the clean air centers, and I don't know, is CAPCOA the organization that communicates with the legislature about various stances that the districts take on legislation?
Yeah, CAPCO is a trade association
Right.
that represents all 35 air districts in the state, and we do have a lobbyist who works on behalf of CAPCOA advocating air districts' positions.
throughout.
Yeah, DAS and I serve on the library committee, ad hoc committee, and it just seems that there might be opportunities to leverage. That is a clean air center if there were money, and you know, libraries serve many purposes, and in this day of short resources, we have to leverage everything, roads and libraries, and get as much out of everything that we can. So that's just something I think might be worth exploring. The other question, I'm coming back to the purple air monitors. I'm really excited about this because you brought some science teachers and some young people who were doing experiments and getting very interested in this whole area. And so the purple air monitors offer us an opportunity to really get people to see what, as was pointed out, is really, we can't smell it often, we can't even see it. So when will you be coming back reporting to us, and will that be something on our website?
Our goal is to get all of our 43 Purple Airs deployed by May. And then that brings us either to the May board meeting or to the June board meeting. And we'll definitely have a segment on our website that will link to the Purple Air page. Purple Air manages their own web page where you can see the devices located throughout, and you have to zoom in, kind of like Google Earth in that way. But we'll have a link that's provided for sure to that, all of our local facilities. And the way you install your Purple Air, we're going to also have nomenclature, so you'll know which are operated and deployed by the Air District versus individuals that have the ability to purchase and deploy them in their own backyard. So that'll have the Santa Barbara County APCD in the name, so when you click on it, you'll know which one is ours.
Good. Director Williams.
Also back to the purple air and other monitors. You know, the question was brought up about individual monitoring on individual sites or close to where we have more industrial sites. I'm only familiar with the mechanism that the county has, which is conditioning of permits. Are there other mechanisms to kind of force that? So I guess that just so we close the book and get the information out there for the members of the public, that would be very possible to do, but of course that means that to do that would mean approving another oil project, which is the cost benefit of doing that. So, but at least you're confirmed that I know how to get it done. And then the other thing is just on the purple air distribution. You know, obviously one of our areas of concern, as was cited by the public speakers, is fixed sources, but we're seeing really clear stats that people in freeway adjacent zip codes have 20-year lifespans less than other zip codes. I'm hoping that it's not quite as pronounced in this county, but one of the things that I'm hoping with our distribution of purple air filters that we make sure that a significant number of those are close enough to our freeways to really assess some of the public health impacts of that proximity.
Okay. Director Lemonino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to go different direction. So when do you bring, is there like an annual report that comes to us that kind of puts everything together in one piece that says, this is the status of our air quality right now, here's how we compare to other counties, here's the 4 different criteria that we get judged by the state or the federal government, here's how many days out of attainment we've had, and a little history of that, because I've been trying to find that information, and it's like all over the place, and then I don't know what's accurate, what's put out by an industry or another group. Do we do that, or can we do that? So it'd be helpful.
Yes, we can do that. You know, historically, we've looked at things on a pollutant by pollutant basis and not necessarily on a multi-pollutant basis. We do bring information to you on our emissions inventory that we receive from the sources themselves, and also on the monitoring front, where we compare the results of the ambient air monitoring network. But what I'm hearing you ask for is concise summary on an annual basis that gives not only the annual information, but even trends.
Yeah, because, you know, depending on where I go look, again, it depends on where it originates from, makes me feel like I look at it and think, how are we still alive because we're breathing this horrible air? And then you look at another source and it's like, well, compared to where we were in the 70s, we seem to be doing way better. But it would be nice to have it in one air pollution control district like report that says, here's where we are compared to our neighbors, here's where we are compared, maybe even nationally, but the trends, how many days out of attainment we are, and you know, just the overall kind of status of air quality in Santa Barbara County.
Something we could definitely bring back
Okay.
in a future meeting.
Okay. And then, well, I'm not going to get into purple air monitors. I love them, but sometimes when you put too much information out there, especially, and this is the fear I've had for the whole time of these, is if it's not a perfect model, which it isn't, and it can't be at the price that it is, sometimes you put information out there and it scares people more than it helps, because I think people are going to read these and they're not going to be accurate. And like the other thing is, if you put them all by the freeway and you get elevated readings, what are we going to do? You know, because putting it out there is one thing and measuring is one thing, but then following up with action afterwards is completely different. And if you put all this information out there and people continue to read that, man, I've got a high, like by your house, if you have continual high readings, what are you going to do about it? You can't shut the 101 down, and you just depressed your property value. So I'm not saying don't monitor. I think we monitor as we're supposed to monitor. I just think that's a maybe unintended consequence of putting a lot of these out in the community.
Madam Chair.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
There seems to be a lot of questions about purple air monitors, and my recommendation would be that we just agendize this for a future meeting, and then we can have all the discussion and questions that we want to have.
That's very good advice. You're okay, Director Williams? Okay.
Well, I was more just going to clarify that I think it's just because we don't have enough money for more mobile air quality monitoring. That's why I think it's great that the executive director is proceeding with it in her report, because we just don't have a whole lot of other options. And I think a lot of the discussion of this came out during the Thomas Fire, because a lot of smaller communities, you know, Carpinteria, the Valley, don't normally have an air quality monitor, and so they're relying on inaccurate association with another community to determine whether it's safe to walk around.
We could put it on the agenda then for a future discussion. Okay. We're good. Well, we should give Directors Julian and Waite a chance to weigh in if they wanted to. I see you up there.
Julian's good, thank you.
Okay.
I have no questions. I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll close the director's report for now and go to our discussion items, Madam Clerk.
Item G1 is to consider recommendations as follows. A, receive a report on the proposed Clean Air Fund program designed to assist with projects that provide positive air quality impacts for communities throughout Santa Barbara County. And B, adopt a resolution establishing the Clean Air Fund program.
Great. Ms. Arlen Janae.
Molly Pearson, Planning Division Manager, will be providing the presentation this afternoon.
Great. Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Murillo and members of the board. I'm here to talk with you about establishing a Clean Air Fund program. I only have a few slides, so please feel free to ask questions during the presentation. And right behind me are Caitlin McNally, our Client Compliance Manager, and Tina Aguilar, our Administrative Manager, who worked to get this together. So if you have questions on their topics, they're here too. All right. So first, I'd like to explain the concept of a Clean Air Fund. As you're aware, the district already implements a variety of grant and incentive programs that are funded through different revenue streams. These programs typically get implemented through specific state guidelines, and they sometimes limit what types of projects we can do. So what we'd like to have is some flexibility to fund projects that don't necessarily fit into those state or other funding guidelines. As laid out in the resolution that's in your board packet, the proposed Clean Air Fund program would be funded with notice of violation or NOV revenues associated with our mutual settlement program. We would start with an initial funding amount of $100,000 that would come from excess NOV revenue taken in during this current 2018-19 fiscal year. Establishing a fund now with your board enables us to make that deposit into the fund and plan to expend it during the next fiscal year. Your board will be considering our fiscal year budget for 1920 at the upcoming May and June board hearings. So once the fund is established and the fiscal year budget is approved, staff will bring a specific proposal to expend those clean air funds for your consideration at a future board meeting. And once we're done with that specific Clean Air Fund program, we will go ahead, staff will present the results of that program to your board. And then in future years, funding for the program will be included in each fiscal year budget that's brought to your board for review and approval. So here I have, we've talked about the concept of a Clean Air Fund. Now let's provide some examples of projects or programs that could be implemented with the use of a Clean Air Fund. We could do voluntary incentive programs that reduce air pollutant emissions. And an example of that type of program is actually on the next slide. But I have some examples, other examples here. The fund could be used to do air quality research projects or studies. The picture on the far right there is a study we did a few years back at a school in Koyama where we looked at different types of smaller portable sensors that are used for measuring particulate matter. We could also use the fund to purchase specialized air monitoring equipment or tools, such as the Air Pointer portable monitor shown in the image on the lower left, and that's the one our director referred to as well in the director comments. Or we could use it to fund community outreach or education programs. So those are just a few examples of what we could do. And here is a project concept we've been working on, more specific information that we've been researching related to zero-emission landscaping equipment. So we've heard a lot of interest in the community for reducing emissions from this type of equipment. And portable landscaping equipment is generally, or it is regulated by the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, through their small off-road engine regulation. The engine category is 25 horsepower or less, and some of these engines are very dirty two-stroke engines that result in unburned fuel or oil being emitted in the exhaust. CARB has said that they'll be dusting off the SORE regulation in 2020 and proposing stricter emission standards. However, those standards will likely be phased in over time. So the full benefit of the regulation won't be realized until a decade or more later. So through voluntary programs, we can accelerate that switch to cleaner technology. Other air districts have implemented lawnmower exchange programs in the past, and recently the South Coast Air Quality Management District started up a voluntary program aimed at electrifying fleets of commercial lawn and garden equipment. We think the fleet approach is a good one, and both CARB and the South Coast Air Districts have identified several vendors that provide this type of equipment. So targeting commercial fleets can allow for broad community benefit, and it yields a cleaner, safer work environment for the landscapers, the workers themselves, and also the commercial and residential properties that they serve. And based on an initial assessment, we've identified there are more than 650 commercial landscaping businesses in the county, but we know that number is low because it doesn't even include some of the jurisdictions. We weren't able to get numbers for them. So in order to give crews some hands-on experience with this type of equipment, you see the picture on the right there. This is from the CARB website. They put together what they are calling a road show of zero-emissions grounds maintenance equipment, and it's housed in a portable trailer. So the trailer right now is in the South Coast Air Basin, helping them implement their program. But it's being loaned out to different landscapers so they can test out the equipment. And we've heard interest in bringing the roadshow up to Santa Barbara County for companies to try out, and we're currently investigating this possibility. We've spoken with some folks out at UCSB that are trying to get it up here and maybe even get it to the Earth Day show. So if the Clean Air Fund is established today, we'll continue to develop this concept in this slide further for your board's consideration at a later date. All right, so our recommendation for today is to adopt the resolution establishing the Clean Air Fund program. And then the next steps would be to include those expenditures for the program in the next proposed budget for 1920 and return to your board with a proposal to expend those funds. So that's all I had for presentation. I'm sure there's questions.
Are there questions for Ms. Pearson from the board? Ms. Hartman.
Thank you. I was just curious, are these electric charged and are they quiet, and does it include leaf blowers?
Yes, I can answer all of those. Zero emissions landscaping equipment is electric, and they could be have like a battery pack, like a cordless drill, where the battery pack is rechargeable, or they could have a battery on your back and an umbilical cord to a number of different types of equipment. It could include blowers, trimmers, saws that all attach to that battery pack. So that was your first question. Are they electric? Do they reduce noise? Yes, they can. I mean, we've looked at some numbers, and it'll reduce it. I don't know if you understand the decibel system, but it's a logarithmic scale. So you could go from like 60 to 50 decibels, and it would be a really significant noise reduction. So we've heard that, and that is supposedly. And was there a third question?
I think you got it. It applies to leaf blowers. There are
Yes,
people organizing,
blowers,
particularly in Montecito, to get them outlawed, and maybe this is a better or another strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Director Hartman.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I've always been curious about this issue because I'm familiar with, of course, the city's ordinance in the past, but I've also always kind of gone, well, you know, is there some other things that we can do, and is this as big of an issue as some people say? And I've gotten some pretty good info in the last couple of weeks that indicates that the California Air Resources Board thinks it will be the largest source of smog-causing pollutants by 2020, which is the remaining two-stroke motors, which is lawnmowers and leaf blowers, which is, that was kind of shocking to me, you know. So it seems like something that we should have a program for, and of course I would even support this, even if that wasn't the primary focus, because there's obvious constraints to only looking at Carl Moyer funding.
I would add that the city of Santa Barbara has volunteers in policing, VIPs, and they wear uniforms, and one of their charges is to talk to gardeners and residents who are using leaf blowers. So if there's something we can tie together, we actually have people on the ground who are trying to address that issue. Usually it's noise and blowing the dust around, but the pollution factor, of course, is important. Mr. Lavanino.
I'm just curious how that works. I can't see that working in my town with somebody walking up and telling somebody to turn your leaf blower off. That's probably not going to happen. But I think it's a great program, and I think going to the commercial guys is the best. So is this thing available for us to go? I mean, like if we wanted to get some commercial guys together and say, hey, we're going to bring this up and demonstrate? Because if it doesn't work, they're not going to, I mean, if it doesn't work as well, they're not going to want to do it. I mean, how is that? Is that available?
Yeah, as I talked about with the road show, the idea is to bring it up here. I think it is destined for the Bay Area. It's in South Coast right now, so we're trying to get it up here, a window where we can get it up to the county and invite. I think it's mostly public entities, but maybe commercial as well that can come try it out, like check it out, and actually.
Well, if we do something like that, I'd like to see it in North and South County, because we do have a lot of people up there that would do that. And then the other thing is, so I know you're thinking of funding this through the fine violation, and we have a surplus. Is that historically been the case? I mean, I just don't want to run out of funding on this in year 2 because everybody starts.
Yeah, you know, it's not always the case, but we've had a significant backlog in our mutual settlement program and putting a concerted effort to bring that up to date. And through that process, we do have more than what's budgeted. But I would say, I mean, I don't even know on average. I don't know if Tina or Caitlin have an idea of the amount of funds on average that we exceed what we have budgeted. We just thought this would be a good area to pull from when and if it's possible, so it gives us more flexibility.
Right, but it sounds like such a good idea that I don't want to kick it off with this year because we have a surplus in that area, and then next year it's depending on us having a surplus again in that particular area.
Hi, Board Member Lavanino and members of the board. My name is Caitlin McNally. I'm the manager of the Compliance Division, and I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head that we've been over, but in the past, historically, we do go over our budget many years. We have had a few years where we haven't met the budget, so it does ebb and flow. But like Aaron mentioned, this year we know we are in exceedance of or we have excess revenues for our violation settlements. And it's hard to predict, but we want to be able to take advantage of when we do have excess money to put it into this. And, you know, we're hopeful that we will be able to continue to deposit in future years.
Okay. So it's 100,000 of the 164? That's what we're looking for, right? We're 164,000 over? That's what everybody. All right. So you're looking for 100,000.
To start off the Clean Air Incentive Fund with 100,000 is what we're recommending.
I think we're 169 over.
Yeah.
Director Hart.
I'm curious about taking the zero emission landscaping equipment program idea. I think this is a great idea, first of all, the Clean Air Fund program, because it gives you some flexibility to try some new things. But it does seem like it would be useful to have like a pilot program or something with one of the municipal or agencies and perhaps with a commercial entity to give them this equipment for a period of time and then have them evaluated and provide some sort of feedback on that experience, because anecdotally people trying these things may not be as convincing as a formal, we did a test, this is how much extra time it took, or it didn't take any extra time and it worked really well, or whatever the results of that would be in a codified way to make the case to other entities. Maybe you could start with a small city that doesn't have the need for a lot of equipment. Thoughts like that?
You know what we could do, since the action here today is just to establish the fund, between now and when we bring the full program back, we can evaluate different options, see if we can work with manufacturers to do some test runs before we bring you a recommend action to take. So we have some ground experience to point to.
There you go. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a comment, please.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I think there's a very important element that has been left out of this presentation, and that has to do with the cost of these type of utilities. Having purchased battery-operated and rechargeable battery-operated leaf blowers, lawnmowers, vacuums, the replacement batteries are extremely expensive, and I do think that will be a prohibitive item when it comes to this particular Clean Air kind of act, because your average landscaper may not be able to afford that. I'm telling you, the replacement batteries for battery-operated leaf blowers almost exceed the cost of the leaf blower itself. As for a vacuum, exactly the same, and a lawnmower. So I don't know how this program would be able to assist in that. And that really needs to be considered.
That's definitely something we plan to consider, and something that actually South Coast AQMD in their program that they're operating right now, they have the ability to purchase not only the equipment with the original battery, but a backup battery as well. We'll look at that information and assess the entire situation before bringing it back to you. But thank you for the comments. I appreciate that.
Director Williams.
From my experience, the majority of the electric models that you see on the street in the city of Santa Barbara are plugged-in models, not remote battery operated, but both exist. So I would assume that staff would look at the cost benefit of each one, and that we'd try to get, basically models that we get the best air quality benefit for the least money for.
When I read the staff report, it seemed like the money might be available for the public or outside sources. This is for projects generated by this agency. Is that right, Ms. Pearson or Ms. Arlen-Janae?
Chair Murillo, it would be designed for commercial businesses.
Oh, commercial, okay.
It could be institutional businesses as well.
So like a school or a Rotary couldn't come up with a project?
This is for the one specific project that Molly described related to landscape. We were thinking of commercial, but that's just one. You know, through the years, as this fund, if it continues to go beyond pending your approval, we can form those to whatever target audience, you know, we have recommendations for. So this was just one specific project that was being described that we were feeling commercial application was going to be the most effective.
Okay. Well, Ms. Mayor Perotti?
I just want to say that I appreciate this conversation. I do receive a lot of calls, and as well as other council members on the issue of blowers and pollution, and it's not only the noise, it's the dust and complaining about, you know, so close to schools and, you know, children with asthma. So I appreciate the conversation that we're having and looking into this, and I know that the city is looking at an ordinance right now moving forward, so I'll keep you informed of how we go on that. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, if you have the microphone, you can go ahead and make a motion if you're supportive of the program.
Okay, I am supportive of the program. So what is the motion? Motion to adopt the attached resolution establishing the Clean Air Fund program.
Second.
And a second from Director Williams. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Levanino.
I just want to make it clear that, because I think if anybody's paying attention or watching and getting confused, no one's mandating that we're getting rid of gas power. I mean, it sounded like that for a little bit. We're not getting rid of gas-powered two-stroke engines. This is an incentive program. That's one portion of the incentive of the whole clean air plan. I mean, the clean air fund. So I think it kind of got lost somewhere there, that it kind of sounded like we were telling people they had to get rid of their blowers.
Well, sir, in the city
Only
of
in
Santa Barbara,
well, you guys live in a different.
We have an
yeah.
ordinance against them, so. Anything from Santa Maria?
This is Julian. I echo what Mr.
Yes.
Lavanino has mentioned in terms of we have a different environment in North County, and I do support the program, and I think that the staff is going to look into details in terms of how that's going to impact individuals that aren't commercial.
Very good. If we're ready to vote, we'll take a roll call. We're ready? Okay.
Just real quick, I want to make sure there's no one from the public in Santa Maria. Any public comment?
There's nobody up here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so voting on this item, Director Julian?
Aye.
Mosby? Aye. Patino?
Aye.
Waite?
Yes.
Williams? Aye. Hart?
Aye.
Hartman? Lavanino?
Aye.
Sierra? Aye. Perotti?
Aye.
And Chair Murillo?
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous, I think. Good. We'll close that item and move on to the next one.
Item G2, this is to receive and file an update on the 2018 Vessel Speed Reduction Incentive Program.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, staff.
All right. Tim Mitro, Air Quality Engineer of our Planning Division, will provide today's presentation on the VSR program.
All right. So good afternoon, Chair Murillo and members of the board. My name is Tim Mitro, and I will be reporting on the results from the 2018 Vessel Speed Reduction Incentive Program. So this is the fourth year of our VSR program, with previous programs in 2014, 2016, 2017, and now 2018. And what we're asking companies to do is to voluntarily slow down to 10 knots or less during the VSR season, which runs from July 1st to November 15th. And this season coincides with ozone season, and also when whales are present off the California coast. You can see at the bottom of the page all of the partners that are included in the Protecting Blue Whales and Blue Skies program. We've got quite a few different air districts, multiple national marine sanctuaries, and also nonprofit organizations who can see a clear benefit to having these ships slow down. A lot of the ocean-going vessels typically travel at fast speeds, and by slowing down, they'll be decreasing the amount of fuel burned and the amount of pollution emitted. One of the big changes this year is our focus on the 10-knot target. In our previous programs, we've asked companies to slow down to 12 knots, and then they would get an additional bonus to get down to 10 knots. But this year, ships will only get credit if they fully slow down to 10 knots, which is the NOAA-approved whale-safe speed. So just to kind of give you a visual of the areas we're talking about, we have two main VSR regions, one in the San Francisco Bay Area and then one locally down here in Santa Barbara. So so a lot of these areas are actually going to be the busiest shipping lanes in the country, as a lot of container ships are coming over from Asia and traveling into the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Oakland. And then we're also getting a lot of ship traffic just back and forth between the Bay Area and the ports of Los Angeles. So our VSR zones are shown in green. In the Bay Area, they have three different zones that all funnel together in the and then they get and then the ships go down through the Golden Gate Bridge and into the Bay Area ports. Whereas in the Santa Barbara Channel region, there's a route that goes directly through the channel and another route that goes south of the Channel Islands. So here are some of the highlights on how we ran the 2018 program. Another big change this year is taking the fleet-based approach. In our previous programs, we used to enroll specific transits from ships, but this year we shifted the focus from incentivizing the individual transit to recognizing the companies themselves for slowing down their entire fleet of ships, which can be between like 10 ships to 30 to 60 ships. It all depends on the size of the company. So we broke the awards into 4 different categories that you can see at the bottom of the screen, ranging from the Bronze Award, where 10 to 24% of the fleet slow down, to the most coveted Sapphire Award, where 75% or more of the fleet slow down to 10 knots or less. And so to put this into perspective, as we said, fleets can be 10 vessels, 60 vessels, all depends on the size of their company, but they're going to be making a lot of transits. And so if they're willing to voluntarily slow down 75% or more of them to get the Sapphire Award, they're making some substantial efforts to modify their behavior and get these incentives. So this year's program, we had over $240,000 in incentive funds, and the higher monetary incentives would be given to those companies that slowed down the most. The majority of the funding came from the Ventura County APCD through the California Air Resources Board's Supplemental Environmental Program. And these supplemental funds helped it sustain our program and even helped it grow more this year. So here are the summarized results by company. You can see that we tracked the compliance rates in both the Santa Barbara region and in the Bay Area. And so just to name a few of the high scores, the Mediterranean Shipping Company, or MSC, achieved the Sapphire Award in both regions. And the newcomer Great American Lines Incorporated, or GALI, obtained Sapphire in the Bay Area. We also had 6 different fleets that obtained the Gold Award in at least one of the regions, which include K-Line, NYK Ro-Ro, Hyundai Glovis, Costco, Evergreen, and Hapag-Lloyd. The incentive payments paid out to the companies range from $4,000 to $75,000, depending on the award level obtained in each region, and also it depended on the size of the fleet. We also gave out awards to the most improved companies in each region. So on this chart, as you're looking at it, you may have noticed that there's a slightly higher level of compliance for the Bay Area, as they have a few more companies that achieved Sapphire, Gold, and Silver. And a lot of this is because the Bay Area has historically had higher voluntary compliance rates in their smaller VSR zones. And to account for this, the partners only awarded incentive funds to the gold and sapphire awardees in the Bay Area. All the bronze and up got awards in the Santa Barbara region, but only gold and sapphire got incentive awards in the Bay Area. So recently on March 6th, the partners hosted an awards ceremony for the companies at Banning's Landing near the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. Company representatives received plaques and praise for the commitment to slowing down in both regions, and the event was attended by 10 of the 12 shipping companies, representatives from various California state senators, and a representative of United States Congressman Alan Lowenthal. One of the awards that was given out was the Whale Tail Award, as shown in the center picture. So as we said, MSC, they were the MVP of the year. They got the Sapphire Award in both regions, and they had 23 different vessels that slowed down for over 140 slow-speed transits. So that was quite a commitment by them. On this chart, I've identified how the program has evolved and expanded throughout the years, both in terms of the amount of incentive funding available and the emission reductions achieved. So back in 2014, when we just started this was just a small little trial program with only a handful of vessels that were participating. But now, as we're growing, we're at nearly 280 vessels that are being recognized for their slow speeds. So that's a lot of different ship captains and crews that we're reaching out to that are modifying their behavior to help slow down and reach our goals. The companies are also receiving less money per transit. Back in 2014, again, we were incentivizing each transit at around $2,500. But now we're at less than $500 per transit in the Santa Barbara region. So we keep on trying to stretch out our incentive money to do more, and it's still working. We heard from the company representatives that the money is helpful to justify their behavior changes and their speed reductions, but they're also always accepting, or, looking forward to the recognition that we do, such as our recent event at Banning's Landing. On the emission reduction side, the VSR partners contracted with the Starcrest Consulting Group once again to perform the calculations. So this year we've achieved approximately 266 tons of NOx reductions and over 8,600 metric tons of greenhouse gas reductions. And a lot of these reductions were occurring, as I said earlier, during the peak of our ozone season, which helped prevent some ozone exceedances from occurring onshore. Looking ahead, there's a lot of new programs on the horizon. So on the federal side, we've previously mentioned the Blue Whales and Blue Skies Act that was introduced in late 2017 by Congressman Alan Lowenthal. This legislation would recognize the voluntary VSR efforts on the West Coast and is planned to be reintroduced into the upcoming legislative session. And then, as Erin mentioned during her director's report on the California side, the Ocean Resiliency Act by State Senator Scott Wiener. So this is a comprehensive bill that focuses on water protection, but it does still have that added part where it's directing the California Air Resources Board to develop a voluntary VSR program on the West Coast, which we hope has some additional incentive funds attached to it. So the district will continue to track these bills and provide updates to your board. In the meantime, we're just prepping up to begin our 2019 VSR program, which is coming soon. The partners still have over $240,000 in incentive funds available for next season, and so we hope to have another successful year where we can protect blue whales and blue skies. So with that, if you have any other questions on the VSR program or marine shipping in general, I would be happy to answer them for you.
Questions for Mr. Mitro? In Santa Maria?
Nope, thank you.
Thanks. It's just a very good report. We don't have any questions, but we love the Save the Whales part of it, right? You get to go home and tell your kids, And think of all those people in those pictures, right? Their kids and their grandkids.
Yeah.
Get to hear the good news.
Thank you.
So that's just to receive the report. We don't need to take a vote on that. Mr. Mitro, thank you very much. And that takes us to announcements. Is this where we make announcements? Not really, huh? This is that the next meeting will be, or rather, this meeting will be broadcast Channel 20 here on the South Coast, I think, Sunday, March 24th. And if there's no other business, I'll adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.